Hello and welcome to another wonderful, inspiring, unexpected conversation. Today we have another beautiful guest for you. We are going to be talking with Nikita Thakrar, who is a personal coach. She supports individuals who dare to dream, guiding them towards a path of purpose. She's more than just a coach. She's an award-winning entrepreneur. She founded a dance and yoga studio. She has a company. She's a gifted facilitator and the author of Meditation Through Poetry. And she combines NLP with spiritual approach. She's a Reiki healer. She encourages insight and introspection and guiding people of all ages towards fulfilling their passion and purpose. And I can't wait to get deep into the journey with Nikita. But before we do that, let's say hello and welcome Nikita to the podcast. Hi there. How are you?
Hi, namaste. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast today. I'm so excited to be here.
It's our pleasure. So I know I just run through a bit of your bio, but I'd love to know from you in your own words, who are you? What do you do? And maybe you can start guiding us on this journey with Nikita, about where did the journey start for you?
Yeah, so this is an interesting question that you've asked me. Who are you? And actually, this is something that I ask myself on a regular basis. And I encourage my clients to ask themselves, who are you? Who am I? And what I really mean by this question is, who am I beneath all of the layers, all of the roles that I play, the responsibilities that I hold, the labels that I associate myself with? And really, Journey with Nikita is about embarking on that self-discovery, that process of understanding my identity. So, who am I really? So I would say as a child, I was very curious. I was naturally very inquisitive. My friends were off playing in the playground, and I was in the school library, and I was reading books, and I was writing poetry from an early age. And I was really on a quest to understand myself. And so I think that that trait has always been there within me. And it was only when I was 16 years of age, I decided to change my name. So I wasn't born with the name Nikita. I was born under another name. And I never felt like I connected with that name. And again, this theme of identity was very key within me. And it's only when I changed my name I felt like Nikita could do anything. She could be anything she wanted to be. And it's almost as like I created this persona that she could do and be whatever she wanted to. And it was at the age of 18 that I went to India by myself. I was born and brought up in the UK. I would say I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth, in the sense that I had everything, there was nothing that I needed. All my basic needs were met, yet there was a longing for something more. It was as if I knew that there was some deeper meaning to life. And I went to India and I ended up staying there for 10 years by myself. And it was during this time in India, I was studying Indian dance, yoga, meditation, that I really had this soul searching process within me. And I decided that I had to share this with others. And so that's really how my journey started. And now I'm in a very lucky, fortunate position where I'm able to help other people and support them on their journey.
Wow, that really is a journey. But I love that it starts from, within, that you were not necessarily looking outside and being like, oh, these people are on these journeys and these people are doing this. Well, let me figure out how I can be like them or how I can have what they have. That you really came to it where there is something in me,
Yeah.
calling me, nudging me, encouraging me, even yes, to change your name, to redefine your identity and to dig deeper and
Yeah.
explore. So
Yeah.
there is such a wealth of areas already. My mind is exploding with ideas and questions where we can take it. But I still want to take it slow with you change your name, you decided to go on this. quest
Yeah.
to seek and discover to India. How did that go? What have you started learning? Obviously, 10 years is a long time, and going there alone, it's such a vibrant, overwhelming, incredible country that going there alone. How old were you when you went there, if
I
I
was
may
just
ask?
18 years old and I didn't plan to stay there that long. 1 year turned into two, into three. Of course, I came back, I was going back and forth to see my family. But it was really a time when there were no smartphones. In order to get internet, you had to go to an internet cafe. So I didn't have any distractions externally. So as you mentioned, I wasn't looking externally for any validation or any comparison with other people. It was all about going internally and really understanding who am I. And the mediums through which I did that were dance, Indian classical dance, which I'm trained in, yoga, and meditation. Those were the three skills, if you like, that I was immersing myself in while I was there. And it was only when I had grasped those and mastered those skills, I was like, I can't keep this to myself. I have to share this. And that's what started shaping my career. And I was so fortunate that in 2011, my dream came true and I launched my dance and yoga studio in the UK. And it was a surreal moment to see my name on those studio doors, knowing that I had made a vision come to life.
And it's so interesting that, you really showed us that where you are right now is just an almost an intentional coincidence. And it's an interesting combination of words because it is a coincidence because you did not embark on this journey to build something and to teach someone and to become a healer. You were just curious and you wanted to find out. And it was this longing to learn more. And once you had this knowledge, obviously, makes sense to be like, more people need to know that this is
Yeah.
incredible. I can help people. But how did this start, this building then of the dream? Like, yes, you're in India, you have all these amazing skills, you're learning, you realize lots of things, and then you're like, oh, let me come back to you again, build a business, be an award-winning business owner. That's a hell of a journey as well to do that. The change of culture, the challenges around there. Tell me about this part of the journey, please.
Yeah, honestly speaking, I can't take all the credit because I really do believe in the divine intervention. And so I think I was guided to do this. I think this was my calling, this was my purpose. We will go into purpose a lot more. It's in Sanskrit, the word is dharma, and it's a very special word to me. And I really believe that this was and still is my dharma. And so, what I'm proud of myself for is having the courage to follow it. But the rest I feel was all meant to be. I'm not saying it was easy, of course. Every business has its ups and downs and has its challenges. But I had that trust. I trusted, whatever you would like to call it, the universe, God, the divine. I really had a lot of faith that this was meant to be. So, my relatives and my family were concerned and they said, you may not have a lucrative career because Indian classical dance is a very niche area and it may not be very popular in the UK and you might struggle. But I wasn't looking at that. I wasn't thinking about that. I was just following my passion and it didn't matter to me if it wasn't lucrative because that wasn't what I was thinking. I was thinking I want to help people. And that's still what I think today.
And along the way, you have picked up so many different, let's call it modalities,
Yeah.
that on top of Indian dance and yoga and meditation, when someone now looks at your website or your LinkedIn or Instagram or finds you anywhere or basically wants to work with you, you have uh, really built this variety and beautiful selection of, modalities or practices from Reiki and meditation through poetry, journaling, nature. There's so much off there. around that, you've really immersed yourself with. So can you tell me, how did you start adding these little things onto the mix? That's something that started as a dance and yoga studio has now built into, the journey with Nikita the way we see it now.
So my personal and professional life is intertwined. They're part of the same. There's no separation. So everything that's ever happened to me personally has then manifested into an offering professionally. So what I mean by that is I achieved my dream. I launched my dance and yoga studio. I had my name in writing. The local community came, the mayor gathered, it was in the press. I was the first person in the country to have my own Indian dance school and with its own premises. And exactly 1 month after that, I was on a complete high, as you can imagine. I fell very ill and I got diagnosed with a very serious lung condition. I ended up having a major lung surgery, and it could be a result of the 10 years that I spent in India because of the pollution. We're still not sure to this day what caused it. But suddenly, I went from being on an extreme high to just being at rock bottom within the space of a month. And I was faced with this mystery illness. And so, what this did is it forced me to really isolate and to go back inwards again. But thankfully, I already had the tools because I had developed them in India. So I feel like those 10 years that I had spent there had almost given me the foundation to be able to cope with this illness. So straight after that, I found neurolinguistic programming. I found a teacher and I found a course. And I would really say that saved me because what it did is it helped me to break down my thought patterns. So, neuro is your thought patterns, linguistic is your language patterns, and then programming is how to reprogram the subconscious mind. And so by finding NLP straight after my health diagnosis helped me come to terms with it. And I reached a stage of acceptance much quicker than I would have if I didn't have that tool. And so I remember writing a letter to my disease. And in that letter, I wrote, I know that you're now with me for the rest of my life. I know that I have to take medication, but let's make a deal. I will look after you if you look after me. And that's what I wrote in my letter. And it was a real cathartic process to be able to almost communicate with this entity that had now entered my life and was taking over my body and my mind, the symptoms and all of a sudden the side effects of this new medication that I was on. But it really helped me to reach a stage of acceptance, and I would really put that down to all of the skills that I developed in India, but also from finding NLP.
India sounds like it was a real, almost your launching pad into who you are becoming now. I know that the sort of the first step was really changing your name.
Yeah.
But India seems to have been a real, or the catalyst almost, or launching pad. But one question that I have, and it's just because I'm a nosy person and I like to know things, is what made you come back to the UK? Because I mean, 10 years, you can get quite settled into a place, and in classical Indian dance is most probably more popular in India than it is or was at that time in the UK. So what brought you back, or decided to come back to the UK? I mean, I've never been to India, but I've heard amazing things about India. And as Lenka said, it's a vibrant, it's a noisy place. And I think you have slightly more sunshine than you have in the UK. So what made you come back?
Yeah, so there were two things. The first thing was this strong urge to want to bring this to the UK. So I wanted any girls or boys for that matter that had such a strong desire like I had to be able to learn in their hometown and to not have to go to India like I had to. So that's not to say there were not already teachers, there are, but the kind of intensive training that I wanted to go through myself wasn't available. It was only weekend classes or evening after school clubs. I really wanted to dance 8 hours a day in the 40-degree heat with the mosquito bites on a concrete floor. Like, that was my desire, with the sound of tabla and harmonium and sitar and the sense of incense in the air, you know, the magic and the vibrancy of India. I just wanted to bring 10% of that to the UK. So the first reason was my strong urge to want to be able to promote it in the UK. The second was because towards the end of my decade, in the 10th year, I started coughing a lot. And that's when I suspected that I may have a lung condition. And so it was very much health related. And even now, you know, it's been 12 years since my diagnosis, but I have a strong pull to go back to India. But there's that fear around going back due to the pollution. So it was those two reasons that I decided to come back.
And I love that reason is, like you said, you went to India to experience or immerse yourself in the dancing, the concrete floors, the incense, the spices, the 40-degree heat, and doing it for 8 hours, and then getting yourself into a position where you can actually now bring that with you. Okay, most probably not the 40-degree heat, or you can bring the spices and the incense, but it almost sounds like you needed to go there in order to come back with this knowledge, this sort of experience, and this, well, mostly the knowledge to help to teach, you know, children or adults, I'm assuming as well, or people who want to really embrace classical Indian dance and to have it essentially more on their doorstep than to go to India, because going to India is not always a practical option or an option. And I guess Reading is slightly closer than India for some people.
Yes, exactly. And, you know, it's becoming more and more important to parents of British Indian children that their kids grow up with the knowledge and with the experience of the culture, whether that's through language, food, dance. You know, there's so many different ways that they're trying to keep that connection. So it was almost like a bridge between the UK and India. And I felt a responsibility for that because I had spent so long there. So I felt like I couldn't keep it to myself. Same with NLP. Once I learned that, it was like a desire that I have to impart that to others. And it was only 5 years after my diagnosis, so after my studio launch, that I came across Reiki healing. And now this was another modality, if you like. It was another string to my bow. And this really became a game changer again for me, because I learned how to manage my symptoms of my condition and how to support the side effects of my medication through self-healing. And I really believe that today, you know, it's been 12 years since my diagnosis, and I'm thriving in all areas of my personal and professional life. And sometimes I, you know, go back to my doctors for follow-up appointments, and they look at my scans and they're amazed at how well I'm doing. And I truly believe it's because I continue to practice dance, yoga, I meditate on a daily basis. I do incorporate NLP, as in I'm aware of my language patterns, my thought patterns, and it's the energy healing. So I'm practicing all of these skills on myself. And then, of course, I'm sharing them with others.
You've just touched on something that I'm quite passionate about, is this being able to find the word that flings about as alternative ways of healing, but it's not alternative because it's been around for years and years, hundreds, thousands of years. Reiki is not new, yoga is not new, and I know that, or you know, from what I understand is, you know, yoga and Indian culture is very much based on the chakras. And of
Yeah.
course, Reiki as well is about balancing the chakras. And for any of our listeners who don't know what the chakras are, and please do correct me, Nikita, because I'm giving the layman's version, is they these points on the body, and they have different colors and different meanings, and different they focus on different areas. So you have your crown chakra, which is about your thinking, and you have your heart chakra, which is about your feeling in your heart and your throat and your, so they go through the body, and they've been there for thousands of years. It's not a new thing. And Reiki is not a new thing. I mean, Eastern medicine is coming back into Western culture, but this talked about like it's this new thing, but it's not. It's ancient. It's the wise ones from long time ago knew about this, and I love how you incorporating that, and you bringing it in with your Western medicine, because it's not about one is 100% right and the other one is 100% wrong. It's about finding that right balance. And sometimes Western medicine is needed, and sometimes Eastern medicine is needed, and sometimes it is a matter of have them both. Maybe we need to work on that. And I love how you've shared that, and how you've brought that in and utilizing it for yourself.
Definitely. I mean, one thing I advocate and I really want to emphasize on for our listeners is that I use Western medicine. I take steroids every day, and I would not be here without them. So medication, I believe, is very important, and I want to advocate that. But what I am inviting people to explore is alternative therapies alongside medication to help manage symptoms and manage side effects. So it's not like we're just surviving with the medication. We can actually thrive with holistic therapies. And that could be anything from acupuncture to reflexology, even some form of massage therapy. What I have done is created a new treatment. It's called Reiki Ritual. And what it does is it incorporates essential oils with energy healing, which is very interesting because, as you know, essential oils have medicinal properties, and they have been around for thousands of years, as you said. So what we do is we place the essential oils in the palms of our hands and place them directly onto the body, onto the chakras. So the person feels the heat, the warmth, the soothing sensation of the energy, but they also get the, medicinal and healing properties of the oil. So it's a double whammy, and it's so powerful. And I've had such amazing results, and I use it on myself, and I also use it on my clients. And I really want to teach more people to be able to self-heal.
And that is so important. Is we've had guests who've spoken about the body, and blood work and movement, and it's learning to listen to our bodies and listen to what we're saying, because nobody knows our bodies as well as we do. And this is you showing us or reminding us that it is important to really listen and find ways to help us to heal ourselves.
Exactly. So the chakra system is almost like, imagine a highway or a motorway. If there's lots of roadblocks, your car's not going to be able to go smoothly. You're going to have to go around them. It's the same thing. So once Reiki, what it does is it removes those blocks. So then everything starts to run smoothly. And, people often ask me, do you have to be a special person to have Reiki? No, anyone can do it. Everyone can do it, because it's universal life force energy, which we all have within us. If you're alive, then you have it within you. So anyone can become a healer. But first, it starts with ourselves. And that's really what I want to teach people, is how to use your hands and use your intentions. It's the power of the mind to be able to heal. And actually, you don't even need to use your hands. We can do Reiki from a distance. I can give somebody Reiki in Australia and they'll still receive it. Isn't that amazing? Why? Because everything is made up of energy. Even right now, if I'm sending pure intentions, pure vibrations to both of you, you will be receiving it.
You have spoken a little bit about the chakras and Reiki, and I've explained it in a very, very layman's way. Can you just, for new listeners who might not have understood it and they might be thinking, oh, this is getting way woo-woo for me, just a little bit about what is Reiki and what are the chakras? Because they are, as you said, they're part of the universe, they're part of our history, they're part of humanity's history, and they are coming back, or they have been here for ages, but it's becoming more and more popular, and it's just a way to help people to understand a little bit more. It doesn't mean necessarily that they're going to go off and learn it or receive it, but just having that little bit of an understanding so that the conversation can maybe make a little bit more sense.
Sure. So on a practical way, if we have physical symptoms, we often look at those symptoms. We go to the doctor and they address them. But what we're inviting people to do is look deeper. So it's based on the belief that everything that manifests physically comes from the mind. So the mind and body are connected, as we all know. And so the chakras, when something is blocked, so I mentioned it's like roadblocks, it stops the energy from flowing. So let's talk about the throat, for example. When I was growing up, I mentioned earlier, I was a very shy child. I very often had laryngitis. I had tonsillitis. I was always ill with sore throats. And it's only in my 20s when I discovered the chakras and I started actively working on my throat chakra that I started noticing that I wasn't getting as unwell. And also what I noticed is I started speaking more confidently. So I went from being very shy and timid to suddenly doing public speaking. And so I believe that that's the result of me working actively on my chakras. So it's the idea that whatever's going on in the body, if I've got lower back pain, I might just think, oh, it's muscular. Yes, it might be. But if it doesn't go away with treatment, then you may wish to look deeper. So if somebody comes to me for a treatment and they say, I've got lower back pain, my first question would be, how are things at home? How is your job? How is it your relationships? And the reason I ask those questions is because the lower base is related to the base chakra, and that's your environment, that's your stability. And they'll say, well, actually, to be honest, I'm not really happy at home. I live in an apartment, but I wish I lived in a house. And that's when we really start to explore what's going on. And so it's amazing. And they, sometimes get really quite surprised at the findings. And once we start to work on those chakras, then energy starts to flow, things start to move. And what I've experienced in my own life is that miracles happen. And what I mean by that is externally things start to change. So I'll give you that example again. Somebody's living in an apartment and they want to move to a house. So just by planting that seed in their brain, that actually this is the root cause of my issue, what they do is that pain starts to go down. And then because they've sent that thought to the universe then responds with the same vibrational frequency. And then lo and behold, a house will come up. It will become available. Something will happen, which they never thought might happen, but it does. And I've heard so many stories. I'm sure both of you have heard so many examples of people that have cured themselves from health problems, or things have changed. And this is bordering now into the topic of manifestation. And so manifestation is not a woo-woo subject. It's very much based on we have neuroscientists today that are now saying that there's definitely a link between the pathways in the brain and the universe, or the source, whatever you want to call, working together to make our desires come into reality.
There is so much more than just the neuroscientists looking at the human body who are confirming that, it's real, that there is genuine real power. We can look at visit a human biology, but it even feels like physics and quantum physics that we're really now getting into sphere of, yes, anything is energy, and time, the way we understand it, just doesn't work in a linear way. And we can look at the biology of, belief and affirmations and manifestation of how what we believe, what we think, how it resonates within our bodies, and how that the connection between our bodies and the external world, not only linearly directly, but across, we can go into dimensions and we can go into different time concepts if people wish to go there. We don't need to, but there is now more and more actual scientific proof. And I'm one of those people. I love living on the edge of science, but the more I go into science, the more I learn about neuroscience and human biology and things like that, the more the spiritual woo-woo world that used to be very much out there for me, the more realistic, the more real, the more possible it becomes, because the science is actually there.
Yeah, and I really pray that I'm alive on the day when a scientist and a spiritualist come together and they agree. I really hope that I'm here to see that moment, because it's going to be profound. That's the direction that we're all heading in, and it's very exciting.
I'm sure we're not that far away. I'm sure that a lot more scientists are becoming a lot more
Yeah.
open-minded with, yes, we need thorough, proper research that, uses the scientific method so we can try and test and understand these things better so that we know how to teach and how to apply them and how to use them, which I think is wonderful, because not everyone will accept, well, this is how it's always been, this is how ancient cultures have done it, that's how we're going to do it. There is more and more people. We are living in a very technologically, scientifically, logically advanced world. So we will want to know these things. And it's great to understand on the molecular level of
Yeah.
why the cells behave in a certain way, and why the impact of things like Reiki, manifestation, belief, even things like crystals. What is the real science behind that? So then for more people to feel, I think it almost gives a lot more people permission to believe, which I find the concept of belief, I find fascinating. And maybe that's something we could talk a little bit more about. What does believe in this context, in the context of manifestation, in the context of Reiki and healing? What does believe mean to you, and how do you work with it?
Well, I was quite fortunate in the sense that I have always had belief. So I was born with it, I would say. I've always trusted that there was a higher power. I was quite religious as a child. I used to go to the Hindu temple with my mother quite regularly. And then it was in my 20s, during my time in India, that I shifted from being religious to being spiritual. And what I mean by that is to believe in the soul. So to believe that I am a soul and that we are all connected to the supreme soul. So now I don't go to any temples anymore, or I don't read any scriptures. However, I feel like I had to go through that in order to get to this point. And so I use meditation in order to connect with my soul. And like I say, the supreme soul, which you would like to call God or universe or source. But with others, for them to believe, I understand that there is, a kind of percentage of people that are very skeptical about things like this. And that's because they are very logical thinkers and they like proof. But in my experience, people come to the world of spirituality when they feel lost. And it could be that things are crashing down in their physical world. Often people will go through, a big life change like a divorce or a miscarriage or something like that, or some kind of a trauma has to almost happen in order for them to start seeking the deeper meaning, which actually I have always been seeking. As I mentioned, I was a child in the school library writing poems about philosophy, but other people I know, they have to almost go through, they have to get to their rock bottom in order to start to think, well, actually, what is the meaning of life? And that's really where I meet them, when they're at that point where they're starting to look around and seeking answers. And that's when I start their journey, which is a beautiful and very rewarding thing for me to be able to do.
And it's so interesting when you said, on your journey from more religious to spiritual. I, over the weekend, read an article that looked at belief, the gratitude practice of the positivity, the gratitude as the new prayer, as a lot more people are going on this journey of moving away from traditional organized religions, more towards finding their own way of practicing faith and being spiritual and being connected to the source that you described. And one of the things that seems to be becoming more and more popular, and again, the science is backing it up, is the power of gratitude. Is it something that, you also practice or experience with and help people with? What is your, what is your experience
Yeah.
with
So
gratitude?
gratitude is the most important of all practices. I say to people, if you don't have time to do anything else, practice gratitude. I mean, it is the fundamental aspect. So I now, of course, I live it, so I don't need to write it down or anything like that. But I encourage people to start a gratitude diary where every day they write down at least 3 things. And I encourage them to focus on 3 small things. So not, often people will be like, I'm grateful for the house that I live in or my partner. Yes, of course, that's important. But it's more looking at the small things, like if you drive to a supermarket and you get a car parking space, like, wow, how did I get a space? It's such a big supermarket. There's so many cars. And so when I say I live it, I naturally have this thought when I go into a supermarket. I'm like, wow, I'm so lucky to have this space. And I'm not saying it to exaggerate or be dramatic. I genuinely feel it. And because I feel it, I send those vibrations out. And 9 times out of 10, I always get a parking space in a supermarket because the universe just responds to whatever you send out. And so I encourage people to look at the small things. Did you get the last pastry on the shelf? Did somebody send you a nice message? They didn't have to. Did somebody go out of their way to do something for you? Looking at those small, and the smaller you can make it, the bigger it becomes.
Gratitude is a big thing. I mean, I'm also very much encourage people to have the gratitude, because it's also a great way to build confidence, to build resilience, is looking at having that different perspective on in your life. And as you said, it's about the small things, somebody smile at you or what it is. So I love how gratitude can be found in such different places and different areas and can help with so much. I just wanted to go a little bit back on your sort of your Indian background, because one of the religion and spirituality has been something that I'm very much been looking at over the years and finding my own way on things. And I also love history, and I know that the Indian culture has this amazing history with gods, the amount of gods that you have. And I've also recently read Bhagavad Gita again. I read that years and years ago, and it's I do find it quite a mouthful sometimes to read it, but it's trying to understand life in a different way. So it's not about the worshipping or about the religion, but it's about finding and learning about a different culture and where we've come from, because we've all come from that culture. It might have been via somewhere else. Yes, I am British, I am Swiss, grew up in Africa, but the Indian culture has still been there. I mean, Alexander the Great almost made it to India, or just made it to India. The Aryans from India have traveled, brought the culture from, to to Western civilization, so to speak. Christ has been known to have gone to India. It's all immersed in everything. It's not, well, that comes from that area, end of story, and therefore I have nothing to do with it. So I'm always fascinated with the gods. I mean, then in the North we have the North mythology, Loki and Odin, and the Indians, the native Indians, have their gods, and Mother Nature, and I love how the Indians have all these gods, Krishna, and I can't remember all their names now. The names have all gone out of my head, but how these gods can almost help us to find our spirituality. So I'd love to know from you how, if they've helped you, or if this has helped you, or if you think, well, that woman is totally off her rocker. But I'd just love to know your side of it.
No, I appreciate your fascination, actually. So rather than use the term gods, let's just replace that with deities. So all of the deities that we find in Hinduism are representative of humans. And what they are is they are showing us the values that we have within us. So each one of the deities represents something different. So Ganesh, for example, the elephant god, represents peace and prosperity. Whenever we start something, we always pray to Ganesh. There are goddesses as well, Lakshmi, Durga, and they represent female strength and power. There's Shiva, the destroyer. So each one of them represents different qualities that we all have within us. And so that those deities are a medium through which we can reach God. So that's why I suggested we swap the term, because rather than thinking of them as gods, seeing them as almost a pathway to God, which is, there is only one, that's what I believe. And I think a lot of religions also agree there is only one supreme God. And the Bhagavad Gita that you mentioned, which is the Hindu scriptures, the essence of the book, the Gita, is dharma. Karma and dharma, these two words. So karma means action. So what that means is we come into a human form. We are a soul, which we all know. We've come into a human body, and we're here to fulfill our action. And we do that through, the things that we do, our relationships that we're in, and the deeds, the sins that we commit as well. And our dharma, on the other hand, is our duty. And so the two go together. They're not separate. They're very much intertwined. But what the aim is to go through your karma in order to achieve your dharma. And so for me, dharma is an amalgamation of our soul's journey. And our soul has, if you believe in reincarnation, it's had several lives. And so what dharma does is it brings everything together. It's your whole personality. It's the very reason that you're here on earth. And so it's beautifully depicted in the Gita in a scene between Arjun and Krishna. So Arjun is a warrior and he's on a chariot, and Krishna is the god or the deity, if you like. And Arjun is on a battlefield and he's confused and he's saying to Krishna, how can I kill my own cousins who are on the other side? I can't. They're like my brothers. How can I kill them? And Krishna encourages Arjun and says, you need to step out of yourself and see yourself as a character. And it's only through that detachment that you'll realize this is your duty. And so dharma, loosely translated, means duty, your duty on earth. And so that's a very extreme example of somebody living their dharma. And, we've got so many other examples of great people that have lived, the Queen of England, for example, Nelson Mandela. But dharma doesn't have to be momentous like that. You don't need to be president or, anything very supreme. In order to live your dharma, you can do so within the community, you can do so within your network, because all it really means is being your true self.
And you've explained it all really well. Thank you. And as I've mentioned, I've read the Bhagavad Gita a couple of times, and the way you've explained it, I couldn't even have explained it that succinctly. So thank you. And especially for our listeners, it is well worth reading. It can be quite a mouthful. For me personally, I read it very much in snippets.
Yeah.
It's not a sit down and get on with it. It's not a novel, but I think it's really something that's worth reading over and over again, having on your bookshelf and just pulling it out every now and again, because it's a really powerful lesson in it. And thank you, you've explained it really well. And one of the names, and it shouldn't really have missed me, is Ganesh. I have him sitting right in front of me. I have a beautiful bronze statue of Ganesh, and the name just couldn't come. So I'm going to blame the brain fog and all this on it. But thank you. You've really explained about it, because the Indian deities, they are so special. And as you said, they are the humanists in us, and they do connect. So I really appreciate you explaining that, and hopefully some of our listeners will appreciate us having gone down this journey. This has been quite personal for me, because I am really fascinated with all the different gods, deities, and these ancient religions or histories or journeys going from before Christ and everything, because they are part of us. And I think that we shouldn't forget them. And I'm using that word, Lenka, but we shouldn't forget where this knowledge has come from. So you've really explained it well, and thank you for that.
I'm loving this conversation so much, that we can learn from different people and different journeys, different backgrounds, different cultures. That's why I absolutely love doing this podcast and having incredible guests like yourself, Nikita, here with us. And we could talk forever. I'm just looking at the time, and the time has flown by so fast, and it went by so quickly. And I have tons of questions, but I think for now, we can slowly start heading to the end part of our journey together. But we always love getting a bit more from our guests. So there is this question or opening that we create for our guests, and that's to ask, is there something that you want to say? What is, the parting words of wisdom? It can be something that you've already said before and you really want to just re-emphasize. Or it's something that we haven't had a chance to talk about, that you were really hoping that we're going to touch on this topic, and that you will be able to say this to our listeners, that this is your opportunity to bring in your last golden nugget.
Yeah, so we talked a lot about purpose, and as I said, in Sanskrit, it's dharma. So I really want to encourage listeners to start to this process of getting to know yourself. It's so exciting. It's so nice to unravel all of the different parts of yourself. And it's almost like peeling an onion and getting to the seed and the essence. That is what we call, dharma, where you really start to know yourself. And one of the mediums through which our listeners can do that is meditation. So meditation is the process of connecting my soul with the supreme soul. And so, of course, deities, of course, priests and religious scholars are very important, but actually you can experience a direct connection with the source energy. And you can do this through the process of meditation, 3 to 5 minutes a day. It doesn't need to be very long. And I have guided meditations available, which I would love to share with your listeners. And another way that I do meditate and offer this is through poetry. So I mentioned that I was writing poems from a very early age. And I have published a book called Meditation Through Poetry. And so if you will allow me, I would like to read a poem for you.
Yes, please. We would love. Thank
So you may wish to sit comfortably and close your eyes if it's comfortable to do so. And a way to connect your body and your mind is by taking a few long, deep breaths. This really starts to ground you into the present moment. Listening to the sound of your breath and observing the pace, the temperature, the rhythm of your breathing. This poem is called Meditation. I sit still as I watch my thoughts pass by. Some fly past and others take time. I am not getting involved in the play of my mind. I remain detached, and stillness I find. Nothing remains, only my breath. I am with the core of my being, my inner depth. I hear it sing and feel it vibrate. I connect with myself through a bond of faith. My thoughts and desires have now disappeared as I swim in the pool of emptiness. Nothing is to be feared. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So beautiful. Such wonderful words. And thank you so much for sharing your poems, your meditations with us. It feels very difficult now to actually talk out loud and continue with the podcast because you got us in such a wonderful state. But I think it's also a perfect place for us to encourage our listeners to find out more about you, to connect with you. If this podcast, this conversation, this poem has resonated with anyone listening and they want to find out more, they want to learn, maybe they want to work with you, where will they find you online? What is the best place for them to go to search for you?
Yeah, so I'm on all the social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, under Journey with Nikita. And I also have free guided meditations on my website, journeywithnikita.com. If anybody liked that poem and would like to order a copy of my poetry book, it's called Meditation Through Poetry, which is available on Amazon.
I'm sure that our listeners will find a wealth of tips and tricks and insight and guidance and support and inspiration on your channels. I obviously had to look at your Instagram and your website. So much goodness that if this conversation has resonated, that if something that we touched on, people want to know more, please go ahead and check out Journey with Nikita. Thank you so much for being here with us, sharing so openly, taking us on this wonderful journey. I really appreciate you spending time with us.
Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you so much. And a huge thank you also to our listeners and viewers for being here. And we will always love to hear from you. What has resonated with you today? What inspired you? What is a little tip or insight or idea or action that you're taking away from this conversation? We would love to hear feedback on this. And until next time, speak soon. Bye.
If you enjoyed listening to our conversation, please share it with your friends and colleagues and don't forget to subscribe. We would love it if you could give us a 5-star rating and write a short review.